All right, hello, and welcome to Low Code Cafe episode number 97 for June 22, 2022. This is today we're going to be talking about no code level 1, and we'll get into that a little bit more in depth, but it's just exploring the role of no code developers in the Plant and App ecosystem. So we'll be talking about that and some hotfixes and some updates as well. This is first allow me to introduce myself. My name is Dale Warner. I'm head of support for Plant and App. This is a weekly event that we do every Wednesday at 10 Central Time, and it's mostly a technical event. We talk about our roadmap, the things that are going on in support, and we usually devote the biggest portion of it to a technical topic where we dive into the features and capabilities of Plant and App. These are all recorded, and you can see all the past 96 episodes are all out on our YouTube channel. So we invite you to subscribe to that and set an alert for when we drop new episodes. Today I'll be talking about the product roadmap, so a few technical topics, and then we'll get right into no code development. And I'll just say there's multiple ways to engage. You're welcome to use the chat or the question and answer if you have something that you'd like to get involved with. We also send a feedback form as linked to the invitation that you got to this, and you're welcome to provide us feedback. We look at each and every one of those. All right, product roadmap. We are now scheduled to begin our beta period tomorrow, June 23rd, and barring any last minute developments, you'll have anyone participating in the beta program will have an announcement from us in their inbox talking about the new features. The new features that we're releasing tend to, the major theme that we have for this release 1.21 is the simplification of multiple environments. When you have a development and either a staging or a production, you might have 2 or 3 environments, but we're headed towards a path of making that a very seamless experience. And the first part of it was we had an inability to import and export entities. So you could create an entity on one system, but couldn't get it to transport to another. And that's resolved. That's the first big picture, first big rock item towards this multi-environment deployment. We're also enhancing the installation and hotfixes experience. And what that means is that we have turned that into a low code installation. So instead of it being hard coded, it's coded with the tools. So it's more use of Plant and App within Plant and App. We've done this to deliver a better release experience, but also to improve the way that we do development and making our hotfixes available to our internal team as well as to you. With that, I'll go into our the service from the trenches segment, and this week we are releasing 4 hotfixes. You should see them already in your configuration updates hotfixes segment of your program. The one was for those that this is bothering, it's probably a good one to pick up. This is when you're using a date and time picker, we were not correctly handling when you use other than a month, day, year type of format, but now we're supporting other formats like day, month, year. So that one's out there available for you to install to 120. Also, we discovered that our star rating for people who are still using the Bootstrap 3 templates, that star rating was not returning a value. So regardless of the star rating, it was returning a 0. This fixes that issue. And an occasional caching provider message error. So that's a bug fix. Most people probably wouldn't have encountered that one. And then one enhancement, we talked last week about the version 1.21 wait action that's being allowed to allow delay into a set of actions. That is also being released as a hotfix. And so if you want that in 120, you can get it there. I wanted to point out that I provided incorrect information last week on our 121 features, the entity export and import feature will work on all implementations of Plan and App that have been upgraded to 1.21. If you have two systems that are both up to 121, it's going to work. I had previously announced that it wouldn't work for older systems, and that was incorrect information. Systems that started previous to 117, so nobody has their nose pressed up against the glass on this one. If you upgrade, you'll get the feature. And then I did give correct information. I just want to provide the reminder that this first version doesn't support deleting a property through export and import. So if you're going to delete a property, we recommend that you just delete it in each of your environments rather than try to use export and import to load it to force that to happen. You'll get a bad result, and we really want to avoid that. So that'll be something we address in the weeks to come. I'll mention too that invite you to engage in Campfire. That's Friday, this same hour, 10 a.m. Central Time. That's more of a conversation that we have with our user community, and it's really a good opportunity for you to engage with our community, engage with us, and lots of times we see problems solved just by the ideas around that discussion. So hope you'll join us for that, and I'll paste the link for that here in a moment. As a matter of fact, I'll do it right now. Tell you what, Patrick, if you wouldn't mind, if you'll grab those and paste them in the chat, that'll save me from delaying.
Absolutely, sure.
So with that, I'm going to go to our hands-on low coding segment, and today's topic is no code level 1. Within the Plant and App platform, we are providing a platform that is one for the entire development ecosystem, developer ecosystem. So from no code to full code and everything in between, there's a role that people can play. Today's focus is on the no code role, where you can develop a platform as a citizen developer. If you have a problem and want to implement a solution, you can stay away completely from coding and yet achieve a very good result. The other roles, people who go deeper can do a ton with low code without actually having to break out any professional toolkit like C# or Angular. And then there's a role for full coders to be able to do to extend the platform in any number of ways. But today's focus is on the no code side. So with that, we're going to focus on building a simple no code customer relationship management system. This topic is one that we are working up. The next course that we add to our Low Code Academy, there's currently a course, fundamentals of low code, that's available and free in the Academy, which is academy.plantandapp.com. But we're going to be adding more courses to the Academy in the weeks to come. The first one is a no code course, no code level 1. And so that'll be a very similar content to what I'm covering today. In order to do the primary building block that we would recommend for no code is to develop a data model. If you define a data model using our entities feature, you can, because of all the automatic things that are built into the no code portions of Plant and App, you will end up building a usable app, depending on your criteria, but a truly usable app, and that's what we're going to do today. What we're focusing on is customer relationship management. A CRM system, the idea is that you're going to keep up with your customers, you're going to have some information on file about them. And so, for example, you might have their name and their email address and their phone number, and then we'll go on to build a customer history to keep up with how have I interacted with that customer. Customer relationship systems can be quite complex, but you can build a simple one in a very short amount of time, and that's what we're going to be doing today. So I'm going to move to the hands-on portion of this. I have a website. It's called LCC 97. That's the name of an app on our trial system. And so this is basically an empty app, and I'm signed on as a low-code developer. So if we go to the website, we just see the home and configuration. As I said, I'm signed on to it as, let's see, under my user ID. And there's an empty home page and then the configuration page. The configuration page is where all the Plant and App content is. That's where you'll do your development type work. And oftentimes it's easiest, and I'll just click over there. It's easiest to have both a view into the configuration, because this is where you'll do all of your no-code development, and then also a preview of your site. And I'm going to click the preview button. It's going to open another page, another tab, and it's going to be the front part of the website. So we're on LCC 97 under two different URLs, just the home page and then the configuration page. So I just wanted to point that out to get started. That's the reason I'm using two tabs. We're going to go back and forth. One of the things that Plant and App allows us to do is to test very quickly. So we'll do things within the configuration and then come over and test them. And you'll see this pattern over and over again. I like to test each building block one at a time so that I can confirm that it's working the way I want to and then move on. So with that, we're going to focus today on entities. This is a Plant and App instance just as you would get it out of the box if you started a trial. And so we come in and we have no entities defined. Entities is where we're going to define our data model. So let's do the first one. We can either click the Let's Do It button or the New button. Either way, it's the same thing for our first entity. To keep our discussion simple today, I'm going to accept the defaults in many, many places. So we're going to accept the default namespace. Namespace is just a way for you to group your entities together. And we're just going to allow the grouping to be, everything is just in the default namespace. First thing we're going to do is create a customer entity. And when we do that, we have to provide both the name of a customer and then the plural. So we have customer or the plural customers. I'm going to accept the defaults for the rest of the things and move on. We'll talk about those more in depth within the course, or maybe a little bit more today. We'll see. When we move on, we see the properties that are part of creating an entity. And these are the properties. There are always default properties that are available. They automatically get a unique ID. Who created them and when they were modified, and who did the modification. But we're going to focus on the custom properties. When you have a customer, one of the things that you're going to want to do is going to know the name of the customer. So we'll add that as a property. And that's a text. We're expecting text to letters and numbers for the name of the customer. We'll also get their phone number. So we'll add that as a property. But instead of accepting it as text, we'll go to the drop down and choose that we want a phone number. That's going to do some things automatically in the data entry form for us. So this is just part of the no code. How do we get what we want? Another thing we want to know about our customers is their email address. And so we will add that and choose that is a primitive of type email. And so that's going to force the entry to be an email address when we get to the entry screen. The last thing we're going to keep up with, and we'll be making some changes in this area, but we'll have a status. So the customer, let's say, can be either active or inactive. And so we're going to keep up with what they are. And that's as far as we're going to go in our custom properties to define a customer. There's a display name property. And so one of the fields or properties that you've added here, we pick, and that's going to be the one that gets hyperlinked when we define our automatic definition of the entry forms. So and listings. So we'll pick that name is the display property. We'll see how that works in just a second. So with that, I'm going to save. We've done nothing more than define what kind of information we want Plant and App to keep up with for us. And so having saved that, we now see that in the default namespace, there is a customer entity and who created it and when. And then we have some tools over here that we can access, and we'll talk about those tools in a second. But going back to the theory of testing everything as we go along, I'm going to go to the front of the website, the main site, and the web page doesn't refresh automatically. You have to refresh it. So we'll refresh the page, and now we'll see that we have a customers item that's been added to the menu. So that comes from the plural name that we provided a minute ago. We can click that and go to that page. Notice it goes to the URL/customers. So it's automatically built a URL that you can use for navigation, but we've navigated by the menu. And it's added some things on this page for us automatically. We have the ability to create a new customer, and it has a form to do that. So I'll put my name here, asking for a phone number. And it automatically, based on the US format, it automatically is expecting a 10-digit number. If I begin to provide an email address here, I can leave it blank, but if I provide one, it needs to be a valid one. And we'll say that I'm an active customer. So we add, now we have the name, the phone number, the email address, and that they're active. And this is, let's add another record just for reference, so we can see kind of how some things work. So and we can leave we'll leave email blank in this case and put in inactive as a status. So things that have automatically been built for us, just pointing them out, because just by creating that entity in the data definition, we have the ability to add new records. We can edit a record and for example, change this to own. The records are listed out automatically, and potentially we could do some searching of this. For example, if we type in my name, we see that it'll automatically find records that have Dale in them as the name. So we've gotten some automatic functionality very quickly. One of the so just in
what happens if you so our names are links? What happens if you where do those go?
That's a good point. So each of these are hyperlinks, and that's interesting. These are hyperlinks that the name, that's the one that we chose as the display name, and if we click that, it'll go to a page that has it's the customer detail page. It's automatically created a detail page for us, and it's doing it for customer ID number 1. So we see the name of the customer and then all the characteristics of the customer. The two, if I go back to the customers list and look, the other hyperlinks are just kind of interesting. Because I chose phone and email, those are automatically linked. So if we happen to be viewing this on a phone, on a device that was capable of making a phone call, this hyperlink would actually dial the phone. And if our browser was set up to do an email, set up with an email client, clicking this would initiate an email to the email address that's there. So kind of a lot of built-in and implied functionality just from defining the data. So the first problem that I notice in this, and the first thing that I'm going to want to correct, is that if we either add or edit, the status of this is freeform. And if you've done any work at all with any kind of a defined system, this can be a problem, because you might get values. It might even be a misspelling, something like this. is allowed, and now we have an active customer that has an odd status. So I'm going to go ahead and correct this into something a little bit more, and it's going to introduce our next database, our next data model concept. So going back to the configuration, I'm going to take 2 steps. The first is that I'm going to go to the customer entity and use the edit icon, this pencil, and it's going to bring us back where we came from. We have the general properties, we have the custom properties, and because I found that this didn't work out for me, I'm choosing to delete it. I'm going to use the delete icon. We get a nice red highlight and save. By doing that, when you delete a property, it actually removes all of the data that's associated with that. So if we go back to our site and refresh, we still have our customers, but the status is gone. I did that because I'm going to engineer it in a different way. We want to have a customer status that's limited to only 2 values, active and inactive. And so that's going to be done by creating an entity for it. So we will, in the same way, we'll create a new entity. It's going to be the customer status entity. And we need a plural for that. So we'll do customer statuses. Again, not using anything but the defaults. And the only property that I'm going to provide is a name. The customer status can have a name. We're saying the name is the display name. I'll just point out that if you don't have that, it's not going to allow you to save. You have to choose a display name. That's a common thing, a place where people get stuck. So pick at least one, you have to pick one property that is the display name and save. When we go back to the front of our site and refresh, we now have a customer statuses page, and we can add records that reflect valid customer statuses like active and inactive. So these are the valid values for customer statuses. What we would like to do is to make it so that each customer, when you edit or add them, will display, and you can pick one customer status. So to do that, we go to the customer entity and edit it again, going to the custom properties, and we'll add a property called status. But this time, instead of leaving it as a text or some other type, we can go down to entities and pick customer. It is a customer status that we want to enter. And this powerful logic is going to do some great things for us on the data entry screen. So we'll save that, and we choose override to say we want all the forms that are associated with this to be generated again. When we go back to the front of our website and refresh, we now see that we have a status column again. But this time, when we edit or add a record and go to status, instead of it letting us type anything we want, it provides a drop-down automatically. The drop-down is filled from the customer status entity. So, and it's the display property, the one display name is the one that appears here. So you get a lot of control over what the way things are built. So if this is an active customer, we can choose that and say update. And Patrick is also an active customer. So we'll do that. And then let's say we, in the same way, we want to do a new. And so this is, let's say he's an inactive. And I start to spell it out. I-N-A-T-C-I-V-E. I spelled it wrong. It doesn't find one. So it won't let it be added with a bad value. It has no value in this case, but better yet, pick it from the drop-down. You can type it or you can add it, but it avoids that problem where you have a misspelling. And with a, let's go to the next level and deal with that issue. We go back and edit our customer one more time. Look at the properties. There's some things that we skipped by before, whether or not they're required, searchable, filterable, sortable, and we'll focus on required for a moment. So if we say now, just checking the status as a required option, that the forms that get generated automatically are going to require a valid entry in that. So again, refreshing. If we go to John Wayne and edit, there it is. It was very slow. I don't know why it was slow. We go to John Wayne and edit. We now, it's going to force us to make a choice, active or inactive. And if we, there isn't any way to blank it out. If we do a new one and put, try to enter it, it will say that it's required and will make you choose one of the values that are there. You can't get by with a bad spelling, and you must pick one of the values that are there. So that's the power of the required items, the required feature.
And Dale, earlier you also had a status of unknown, and that's easily added, right? If we wanted to have that.
That's a really great point. As an administrator, you might decide that active and inactive doesn't really cover everything. So easily enough, you can go to customer status, add a new one, and say unknown. Having done that, we can go back to customers, and when we edit or add, it doesn't matter which. Now we look and see we've got active, inactive, and unknown. So it is a powerful way to be able to manage those. That's a great point. Thank you. So sticking with what we dealt with just a moment ago, we were looking at these properties. I'm going to go into the edit again for customer, look at the properties, and look at some of these other ones. Searchable, filterable, sortable are each very powerful in their own right, and I'm going to let's deal with these one at a time. If we right now, phone number, email, and status are not searchable. I'm not going to make any changes to this. I'm going to go take a look at it. So, for example, if we type unknown in our search, it doesn't come up with anything, even though there are some unknown entries in the data. That's because status has not been made searchable. But if we we'll make all of these searchable, it'll be easy to do. So if we make them all searchable and override our page, that now when we refresh the page, we can search. And so unknown comes up as a search thing. So whatever fields that you turn on and with the searchable property, that makes it where it's able to be found that way. In the same way, the email, we've made that searchable. So if we look for plant, we get the email addresses that have plant and app in them. If we look for a 999, Patrick's comes up because he has 999 in the phone number. So we've made each one of those searchable. Another very easy low code configuration item that you can do. Continuing with that theme, going back into properties, there is filterable. So in this setup, it makes sense to make status filterable. And so I'm going to turn on filterable for that and show you what that means. After saving, we refresh the page. And so now we see a new feature on our page where status appears at the top. I'm going to clear out our search here so that we get all of our records. So we have 2 active records, an inactive and an unknown. If we click into status, it shows us the different status values that are available, that are in use in this form. And so we can pick that we want all active records. And so now we see active, or we can also multi-select. So we can say active and inactives. And so now we see, it allows us to get the list that we want. We can also clear all that out and go back to normal. So if you want to, for example, as a business function, if you wanted to be able to look at and find all of your unknowns, you could click that, and now we see all of our unknowns, and perhaps now we figure out, oh, this is really an active and inactive. You can make that change. One of the things that I hadn't pointed out before is that there is a delete functionality that's automatically brought in for you. So if you have the rights to do a delete, and we'll talk more about rights, but if you have the rights to do a delete, it asks you, do you want to delete this customer? And if you say yes, then it goes away. So now we'll clear out and status and take a look. And so now we just see our 3, that 1 is gone, and it's gone forever. It's a deleted record. It's no record of that is kept. So use the delete to get rid of things. The final one that would be useful is in this area is the sortable property. We haven't talked about that one. So we've talked about filtering, and I guess we'll talk about filtering a little bit more. I picked the ability to filter on status. We could filter on any of these others, but it really doesn't make a lot of sense, because filtering on name or phone or email, all those are unique things, and it's not going to give you the ability to to do things by classification. You could turn them on, you could see that it would work, but it doesn't really add much functionality. So I'm not going to turn it on for those.
So if you had like a city or state property, that would be something that would make sense to make filterable.
Absolutely, yeah. Because that way you could look for all of the active people in Tennessee.
Yeah,
that kind of functionality would be very easy to build. But we'll move on to sortable now, and just by the act, I'm going to turn on sortable for both the name and the phone number, and I'm not going to turn it on for the other two, just to illustrate what difference is. So if we save from this and let it do its work, when we refresh the screen, what you're going to find is that those 2 fields that I've made sortable, that's done through, that's shown on the interface through the column name. So when I hover this column name, you'll see an arrow appear in the same way phone number will do that. But email and status don't. We didn't turn it on for those, so you can't sort by those. So if I click this, it's now sorted in order by alphabetically by name, and it's a alphabetical sort starting with the first character. So we get, because we put in first names here, we're sorting in order by first names. We click that again, it goes the other direction. So now it's sorting reverse sort by that. And then there's a third option where you can click it and it just undoes it. It goes back to its default sorting. So you have 3 options for that. We can do the same with phone. So this is going to put it in order. No phone number is the lowest thing, and then 1214 is next, 11999 is next. We can reverse sort it and get the opposite effect. But we can't sort by email or by status unless we simply come in and add those as well to the sorts. And that could be useful, especially status. You might have things in order by status. So from a no-code perspective, you can use these features either one at a time like we're doing, or if you know in advance that you want that feature, you can just turn it on as you're defining the data. So now, for example, we need to refresh, and we can sort. Status is looks impervious because it's a related field. Well, that's a special case, so that's not going to work. But now we can sort by email, and actually I'll do this. Make it. We'll add another value in here. And so it's sorting A to Z that way. We can reverse it and Z to A that way. And because I picked different values than the name, it's showing you that it's not really sorting by name, but by email address. So great. So we've kind of handled the customers part of this very well. We could expand this to add more information about our customers, and but this really illustrates that we can keep up with individual customers. But then let's say that our next step is that we want to know how we've interacted with each of these people over time. So we might, for example, send a letter to Patrick and ask for a meeting. We might send an email to John to thank him for his business. There's a lot of different things that we could do, but we want to keep up with all of that interactions. And so we're going to call that customer history. So we're going to need an entity to hold on to our history information. And so I'm going to go and do that now. So it's a new thing. It is a, we're going to keep with our using of our defaults. And so this is going to be a customer history. And again, we need a plural, so that can't be the same. So customer histories as the plural, accepting all the defaults. The kind of information that we're going to keep up with is a title and a description. So you can have a title of what happened and a full description of what happened. For the description, I'm going to say that it's a large text. It will accept a great deal of text. Patrick, do you happen to know what the limits of either of these are? I don't happen to have them offhand, but text is for short things, a few hundred characters. Description, large text is for thousands.
Yeah, large text is a Invoker max. Yep.
So very, very long.
Yeah.
And we will make title the display name property, so that'll be the one that'll be clickable, and we'll save that. Having done that and refreshing again, because we it's now created a customer histories item on our board, and we could add new customer histories, a title and description. But unfortunately, we haven't done anything yet that makes this relate to a customer yet. So if we were to enter information in here, it would just be floating around with titles and descriptions, but not connected to a customer. It's very easy to connect it to a customer. We can go to the customer entity and edit. And we'll add a new property called history. We could call it whatever we like, but in the type, we're going to want to go down and we want to connect it to a list of entities called customer histories. So what this means is one customer can be connected with many different customer histories, and the linkage to that is going to happen automatically for you. So this, we connected to customer status. We're connecting one customer status to a status. This, we're connecting many customer histories to a customer. So we'll save that and see what we get. So now when we go to enter a customer, we see this new column history, and that there are in each case, there aren't any customer histories yet, 0 customer histories. When we edit, it doesn't change the way that customers are entered or edited. It's still the same for fields. History doesn't happen there. But if we wanted to add history, like we had a meeting, let's say that we had a thank you call to John Wayne, we could say, we could go to the history section and add a record. So this is John Wayne's history. We're adding that. So now John Wayne's record has a thank you call associated with it. And if we were to go back to customers, we can see each of the people, but now we see that John has one customer history associated with it. There's a special icon over here to the right that allows you to open up this customer history by in a new page automatically, new tab automatically. So this link and this link do the same thing, but one opens up a new tab. The detail page that's generated automatically, if we were to go to the John Wayne detail page by clicking the hyperlink, we see John Wayne and his details, his email, his status, but we can also, now we have a history tab, and when we click, we can see that he has a thank you call associated with him. So his history can build. We can have a, we can add another thing like a sales meeting. Activity that we did. And so now that's associated with John Wayne as well. One of the things that would be handy, and this is kind of for the purpose, right now when we defined history, we defined title and description, but there's really no standardized information here. It's you can put in any title and you can put in any description. And we might want to, for example, it would be useful to have a history type so that you could have, whether it was a meeting or a phone call or a Zoom meeting, whatever, and that would give you the ability then to filter. If you were trying to see what phone calls did I make, you would be able to find it that way, because this way we haven't classified them, and so we wouldn't be able to know. So this is the same activity that we did for customer status a little while ago. This would be a history type. So we'll need a new entity to handle history types. You get to make up the names for this, but I'm spelling them out quite clearly so that we know exactly, it defines really well what that is. So this is a customer history type, and the only property that we really need for this is a name, and that is our display name property, and that's it. So again, once we save, we're going to have a new menu item, customer history types, and so we'll define a few of those. The first is going to be a meeting person. Let's say we have and we can do letters. Snail mail still exists, and a email likely. But these are the different types of histories that we want to allow being created. And so we can now associate that with, if we look at our customer histories at this point, we see them, but they don't have any types associated with them. So we can now edit our customer history and add the type as part of this, and we just choose that it must be one of these things. It must have a customer history type associated with it, or it can have one associated with it. And this is a really good time to probably say, if we were designing this initially, we might want to say that this is required, but because we have some data that doesn't have it, it's not a good idea to check this, so it won't work right. Once all our data has customer history types, we can go ahead and check required, and that way everyone going forward will have it. There's another nice little interface thing here. This ... allows us to drag things around. So I'm going to say that the type might be most useful more towards the left of the screen or the top of the form. So I'm rearranging things a little bit there and overriding. So that now when we go to we'll start at the the customer and we'll go to John Wayne's histories. These now have the ability to enter them as types. These are this interface. The editing is a little. Let's see. If we go into this thank you call, we can now edit it and change it to a. This was a call. I didn't even add phone number. So let's say it was a Zoom call. All right. So we'll give that one a type, and in the same way, we'll go back and find the sales meeting, and this is an in-person meeting. So we'll edit that and call it an in-person meeting. And so now going forward, as we look at our customers, anytime we enter a history, it's going to give us the ability to do that. And so let's say we go to my record and do some customer histories. So we'll add a letter. So now we have a type that we can use when we're sorting. I think so just kind of a review of where we've gone today so far. We have customers. Customers can have properties, the phone number, email, status. They can have histories, and then histories get classified. And really, we can filter on those as well. So we haven't set it up to filter them. So, but that's the direction that we're going. So we've built a lot in no code, and if you had an application that needed to keep up with some basic information and to have relationships between two or three or multiple, customers might have orders that have line items. You could build that out using the techniques that we've talked about in low code for this last 30 or 40 minutes. To extend a little bit farther, we can do a little bit of housekeeping, I think. We've built this out where as each item was built, it created a different page and added it to the menu. These things, some of these things might not even belong on a menu. For example, customer statuses and customer history types are just things that are going to be part of the setup for our application, and people wouldn't need to change those very often. In the same way, customer histories are they exist as a thing on their own, but this customer histories entity displaying doesn't have the customer type information associated with it. It really only makes sense in terms of the customer. So I would say that all these three things could be part of the CRM setup, and customers would be part of the CRM or just maybe the main menu item. So I'm going to group these three things into a new setup page, and ultimately that's only going to be accessible to the administrator of the system. Let's see how we can accomplish that. If we move off of the entities where we've been defining all these things and go to pages, we can add a new page to the root of the site. And so the new page is going to be the setup page, and it's going to be accessible. And this introduces a concept that I haven't really talked about yet, but we have roles, people of particular roles. And the only people that I want to allow to look at this is the administrators. So we'll do that. And we'll give the low-code engineers are the people developing the projects. That's me in this case. So we'll give the ability to see this page to low-code engineers and to admins, and we'll do the same thing for who can edit the page, the admins and low-code engineers. And so we'll save that. What that does is if we refresh again, we're going to see we now have a setup page. And if you were to click on it, it's got a URL associated with it. The /setup page goes to the URL. And so that's step one. We now have a page, but we want to move these things that don't belong underneath it. So we'll go back to our entities and take advantage of an option that we didn't use before. So customer history, if we edit, there is a parent page option. And so I'm going to go say that the parent page of customer history is going to be setup and save. When we refresh, customer history is going to, I'm sorry, which one did we change? Yeah, customer history now appears under the setup page and gets off the main menu. So we'll do that also for customer status. We'll say that the parent page for that is set up. And I think customer history type is the one we haven't done yet. So we'll say the parent page for that is also set up. And so we've made several changes all at once here. When we refresh, those things come off the page and they're now available. You can still get to them if you have the rights to do it, but they're out of the way. That customers is maybe the only thing that a typical user is going to see. So I think we have just enough time to talk about roles and users, and we'll do that now. This has to do with securing your application. So there's a page here called roles, and these are all the types of people that can sign into your system. We have administrators, everyone who is able to sign onto the system is called all users. There's people called managers. You might give special permission to your the managers of your CRM system to do certain things like set up customer statuses, things like that, history statuses, history types and customer statuses. So, but these roles are built in and we don't need to do anything with them if they cover our scenario, and they do. The other thing is users. You can have users assigned in your system. And what we're going to do is to create a user to test. And this is going to be a user that has the ability to act as a user in the system, but not to do things like setup. So this is going to be called, you would typically give us a good email. I'm going to give it, this email will actually work to my plant and app address. Remember what that is. I'm going to copy and paste that. This is a, this is reminding me what I'm going to use this user for. I'm going to specify a password. They're not going to get an email. Nobody's going to get an email with this address, but this is going to be my email address. And then I'm going to just do a password called test. Oop. Patrick, would you take a note?
Yeah.
We've added a new feature that clicking away from a pop-up would avoid the pop-up disappearing, but we haven't added it here yet. So we will do a test and test as a password, and they're just going to, when somebody logs in with this username, they're only going to get the role of being a user. So we will add them as a user, and it doesn't like my password. That's test. And so it's allowed me to add this user. And now we would be able to log into the site using that user. We need to do a little bit of configuration within our entities because we skipped over anything having to do with permissions earlier. So we'll touch each one of these and take a look at what this user is going to be allowed to do. The customer entity, if we were to look at permissions, this is a tab we skipped over earlier. What rights does a user have to create and do things with customers? Well, users should be able to view their own entities. We're not going to let users view customers that they don't own, but they can look at their own. We're going to say that they can add a new customer. They can edit ones that belong to themselves, but they can't delete. So they'll be able to enter and view, but not delete. And then this people who aren't logged in on the system aren't going to be able to see this at all. They have no rights to this, so we'll leave that to be none. So save that change, and then we'll do this same exercise on each of these others. We'll think about security a little bit. So for customer histories, users will be able to view their own history entities. They'll be able to add new ones. They'll be able to edit the ones that they have, but they won't be able to delete histories. Notice by default, managers and admins can do everything. So we're just kind of restricting what users can do. For customer statuses, this is something that we want them to, they have the ability to view, but, and even anybody can be able to view customer statuses, but we're not going to let them add or edit or delete customer statuses. So this is going to be the part where we start restricting the ability of them to do things that are really left for an administrator to do. And the final one, the customer history types, in the same way, they can view everything, but we're not going to let them add or change. So we'll save that. And so finally, the way to test this, we're going to need to go to this page, the home page, as we're going to do an incognito session. So we will do a new incognito window. It's going to let us log in to the site as a different user. And the user that we're going to log in on is this test user I created with password test. And when we sign in, notice that we don't see the setup because we don't have rights to see the things that are there. And now we would test. And this is important to do when you're developing an application, is to think about the different roles that people will play, like users, and actually sign in as a user and make sure that you can do everything that you're supposed to be able to do. So this would be, notice that I don't see any customers here because I can only see my own records. We'll put in active customer. We can see them. If we were to go into histories, we can add a history. And we can send them a letter that is a welcome letter. We can add that. So we can see our own things and add histories, and it works, but we can't see things from others. If we, as a administrator of the system, look at customers, we can see other records. So that's just a quick hit on security as well. So in review, we've built a simple no-code customer relationship system solely by defining entities in a few pages. We touched on some security roles and how to create users. And so we focused on doing users that can only do certain things and emphasized about testing. No code in 45 minutes. With that, we will thank you for having attended today. We hope that's added some value to anyone, especially our future no-coders. And we look forward to doing this again with you a week from now in our next episode of Low Code Cafe. Again, I encourage you to join us in our Campfire Fridays at 10. Thanks, and talk to you next week.